I mean, as time goes on, I have this phrase, think like an entrepreneur. The people who engage, I guarantee they're the ones that get promoted though, right? It's almost like if you could find the leaders amongst the crowd, those are the ones who get rewarded. So if you could do a better job at leading and managing and exciting the workforce, potentially you create more leaders, therefore more engagement, probably a better product, better system,
Yep.
better teams, better customer service. Done, right?
Yep.
My name is Mike Fallat. I own the #1 book creation service for entrepreneurs known as Dream Starters Publishing, and I want to help you bring your story to life in a book so you can use that book to generate leads and attention for your business. Contact me today. Welcome to another episode of $1 Million Stories, where we get to interview entrepreneurs and authors from all over the world. You know, I love talking to authors because they have the courage to take their thoughts, put it down on a piece of paper, and share it with the many, ultimately changing their legacy and destiny in the process. So if you're out there and you're looking to write a book, check out dreamstarterspublishing.com. We can help you out with wherever you're at in the process. And if you have a book that's already done, you want to generate leads so you can grow your business, check out bookmarketingcrm.com. Today is a special treat if you are trying to grow your leadership skills like I am. I'm always trying to work on it. And the more I grow my business, the more it really does kind of depend on how great of a leader I am within the organization. How can I let go, but also advise? And there's a thin line, it seems like, to dance between when you want to be the guy that can give answers, but also let others kind of find themselves and figure out their own way so they can become the hero of their own story. And therefore, you're sort of the mentor, if you will. And the book that we're talking about, Uncommon Greatness. All right. 5 fundamentals to transform your leadership. We have an individual who has written many books. So it is an honor to have you on the show, Mark Miller.
Mike, great to be with you today.
Well, let's start off with, I always ask the genesis of this book, but it seems like there's a genesis to the other books too. So what made you want to take your thoughts, put it down in a book? But if you can give us a quick little synopsis of where you come from and how you got to where you're at now, that'd be very great too.
Sure. Well, I started selling chicken about 100 years ago. I worked as a Chick-fil-A team member as a teenager in a local restaurant, but I was awful there. And so I hope none of your listeners have ever had an employee as bad as I was. And so I made a strategic career decision. This is not advice. I quit because I felt like it would be easier to explain me leaving than to explain me being fired from Chick-fil-A. So I went and got another job. 6 months later, I got laid off and I thought, shoot, I need a job. And I can't work in the restaurant, but those chicken people seem pretty nice. So I said, maybe I can work at their corporate headquarters, which of course makes no sense in any universe, but I chalk it up as the mind of a child. So long time ago. So I went to the Chick-fil-A headquarters, told the receptionist I wanted a job working in their warehouse because I knew they had a warehouse. And just a few minutes later, Truett Cathy, the founder of Chick-fil-A, the guy who invented the chicken sandwich, came out, took me into his office to conduct the interview. Now, that may sound crazy to some of your listeners. That felt crazy to me as a kid. I mean, I knew who he was. He was the CEO. Why is he interviewing a kid to work in the warehouse? Well, I later learned he only had 15 employees. And so I guess if you've only got 15 employees, it makes a little more sense for the head man or the head woman to be conducting those interviews.
Wow.
And I tell people today, it was a combination of God's grace and lack of discernment on Truett's part. He gave me that job working in the warehouse, and that was 45 years ago. And so I spent a long time selling chicken and had a lot of different jobs, a lot of different roles. I won't bore you with all of that. But about 25 years ago, we realized that we needed more leaders. Now, I don't know what your listeners do, but what I've seen in common practice is when you have a problem to solve or an opportunity to seize, you put a leader on it. Well, 25 years ago at Chick-fil-A, we had problems to solve and opportunities to seize. We looked over our shoulder at our leadership bench and we said, uh-oh, like we just didn't have any ready now leaders. And so in the short run, what do? You give those problems and opportunities to existing leaders. That works smashingly well, but it's a recipe for disaster if you play that out into the future. And our executive committee understood that, and they asked me to figure out how to accelerate leadership development. And I put together a team of really smart people, and we went to work on that question. And for the last 25 years, My team, the team that I had the privilege to lead, spent most of our waking hours trying to serve our leaders and by extension, leaders around the world. And so that's kind of how I got here today. Uncommon Greatness is the 12th book that our team has produced over the last 25 years, all designed to serve leaders.
Wow. It's awesome, man. So, I mean, if you can give us a quick little definition, what makes a great leader? What do you look for? What do you see? If you can give some characteristics that really shine through and maybe some people that you can think of when you hear the word leadership, what would it be?
All right. So let me start at the highest level. That was the very first question that we began to work on 25 years ago, because we said, if we want to accelerate leadership development, our first and fundamental challenge is, what does that mean and what does that look like? And we felt like that was the root of the problem why we didn't have more leaders, is nobody agreed on what leadership looked like. And so we actually came up with an image that we still use today. We started using it 25 years ago. It's in this new book, and it's the picture of an iceberg. And we think that's the perfect metaphor for leadership.
Wow.
About 10% above the waterline represents the skills of a leader, and the 90% below the waterline represent the heart of the leader. And the heart is so important. We can chase this at some point during this conversation if you like, but here's why it matters. If your heart is not right, no one cares about your skills.
Right.
And I think I can prove this to your audience if that strikes you as odd, because most folks don't talk about the heart of leaders. But you probably know someone who has the skills to lead, yet you don't want to follow them.
Bingo.
Well, if they've got the skills, why don't you want to follow them? My bet is because you don't trust their heart. You don't trust their heart. Are they self-serving? Are they for you? Or are they for themselves? If the heart's not right, nobody cares about your skills. That's the key. Yes, you need the skills. An iceberg is above the waterline and below. But if your heart's not right, nobody wants to follow you. So then the skills become irrelevant. And so we came up with that picture 25 years ago, and we've written about it numerous times. It's featured in this new book because we believe far too many organizations ignore or are oblivious to issues of the heart, and they wonder why so many leaders can't gain fellowship.
Yeah.
It's because their heart's not right.
Yep. And the fact that maybe there is a leader in your life and then you follow them into the desert potentially, and then you start to see who they really are once you're out in the wilderness. And then you start to realize their heart is not what you thought it was in the beginning. And therefore, they're saying the same stuff. They're doing the same stuff, but the belief is gone now, the faith in the person. Right. And it has nothing to do with anything except for you had a glimpse into who they are in their darkest days. And maybe that's their true character. And that's what made you want to separate yourself. Am I right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So in your book, you have a couple fundamentals, 5 fundamentals. And the one you start off with is see the future. Now, in my first book, Dream Starter, I talk about in order for my first business to succeed, which was actually my 5th business, vision, right? Seeing 5 years out, seeing the next step was instrumental. I only thought about the dollar in my first 4 businesses, right? Getting the sale, but the vision really what separated the 5th business from the first 4 failures, if you will. So tell me about seeing the future, see the unseen, and ideas for action.
Well, leadership always begins with a picture of the future. And a leader who is not trying to achieve something, accomplish something, become something, take people somewhere, I could argue you're actually not leading. Now, you might be managing. We could have that philosophical debate. I'm not even sure what you're doing. But if you're not trying to pursue a preferred future, I'd say you're not leading. And so it is the first fundamental for a reason. Now, I'll quickly say, I don't represent these as a linear process, like check, 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 check. And people often ask me, well, if it's the first fundamental, is it most important? And I think it's first among equals for the reasons I just stated. If you're not trying to go somewhere, what are you doing?
Right.
Like, what are you doing? Right. So it is first among equals. Leadership always begins with a picture of the future. And you reference see the unseen. That's the essence of it. We're supposed to, as leaders, see the potential in people before they see it, see threats on the horizon before they manifest themselves. We're supposed to see opportunities that don't yet exist. We're actually trying to call to being some preferred future. And you can't create what you can't see. You can't create what you can't articulate. So it is the first fundamental for a reason.
And so, I mean, I've read about great leaders before, and it's really all about showing the promised land, right? Showing some type of symbol of hope, but some place that we all want to go to. And then you assemble a tribe, and then you give that tribe, I guess, maybe the belief, the confidence, the tools, the resources to obtain that promised land. And maybe in a sense, you kind of get out of their own way, right? And I think that great leaders create great leaders. So you need to have individuals who are very resourceful. Therefore, they're not always looking for answers. They have the answers within. And so maybe it's another aspect of mirror. There's a mirror that's going on. You attract more so of who you are. And when you show the promised land, maybe it's like you or the where you're going, whether it's financial freedom or spiritual freedom, confidence, whatever it is, you basically, I don't know. Is it almost like stoking a fire where you have to implement motivation and and glimpses of what that's going to look like once you get there? Hey, once we get over this hurdle, once we work with this client, once we do this and how it's going to lead to a better life. And I guess maybe I always equate everything to the hero's journey, that everybody's going through this hero's journey. And so it's your job as the mentor slash leader to make it as exciting slash easy slash comprehensible, I think that's the word I'm looking for, so that they understand if they do this, then they can acquire Y, right? They're able to slay the dragon if they do the little stuff first. So there's a lot going on, I think, in leadership, but it's really about showing something that excites them, but
Right.
it excites you too, right? And if it
Right.
excites you, most likely you're going to attract the right person into your life.
Sure. I agree with everything you said. There is a cautionary note, though. People love certainty, but they'll settle for clarity. I think we got to be really careful, even the way we think about this. If I can convince people to do ABC, then we'll realize XYZ. Well, maybe you will, maybe you won't. I say a leader can really only provide certainty on a couple of things: intent and effort. Beyond that, you got to do the work, and you've got to adapt, and you've got to be flexible. You got to be fluid.
Wow, it's a good way. So you said that sentence, and I want to make sure it's memorable for the people listening or watching. But people love certainty, but they will settle for clarity.
Right.
And clarity is a superpower. But just being able to connect the dots and it makes sense, right? This is why I would assume that individuals kind of fall into the trap that, oh, if the devil I know is better than the devil I don't know. So even if I hate my job or whatever I'm doing, I at least know what it's all about. So uncertainty, the new world, the unfamiliar world scares me. Even though it might be better for me, it might be worse. So the fact that I
Right.
don't know, I'm able to say this is clear for me now, therefore I will stay put. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay. And so when you talk about great leadership, being able to articulate things very well in a simple manner. That's why I believe the
Hmm.
greatest books are written at a 13 to 14-year-old level. What the greatest speeches are at a 13 to 14-year-old level. Never say something in 10 words when you could say it in 5. So simplicity is an art, and great leaders encompass that.
Absolutely. I agree.
Cool.
No
All right.
question.
So I want to touch on a few others. I mean, we could spend
Yeah,
hours
sure.
probably, but become unstoppable, engage and develop with others. All right. So when I think of my developing my leadership skills, I believe they've developed by giving individuals more freedom to kind of fail on their own and make mistakes, but engaging with them whenever they need, right? Being there, but allowing them to kind of maybe say the wrong thing on the sales call and then correcting it as you go, but giving them, I guess, the trust in them that I have faith in them. So that's what I think of when I see this. But what are you saying in fundamental number 2?
Well, you captured the essence of it. I think you've got to engage people, and it's a big concept, but we've tried to simplify it to your earlier point. And engagement is really about how much people care, how much they care about their work, how much they care about their coworkers, how much they care about their customer, and how much they care about the organization. And if people don't care, they're not going to help you accomplish your vision. And so leaders have a huge responsibility. In fact, I challenge leaders all the time. You determine the level of engagement of the people in your organization. And some leaders push back. They don't want to own that. Going, well, the best leaders own the engagement level of their people. And I don't know if your audience is familiar with some of the numbers, but depending on whose survey you're looking at, globally, Marcus Buckingham is saying these days that engagement is at 15% globally in the workforce. Is it any wonder that excellence is so elusive, that there are very few high performance organizations, because people actually don't care, and they tell you that when they complete these surveys.
Wow.
And so that's that second fundamental. You've got to engage people so they'll go on the journey with you.
What does that mean? That
essential.
15% number? What is that referencing?
Well, it's references when you try to figure out how much people care at work. 85% will tell you they don't.
Oh, wow. You mean they're not engaged with the mission
Globally,
of the company, basically?
they're not engaged with the work, the coworkers, the customers, or the organization. They are just taking a paycheck. They're doing as little as possible. Now, if you
Wow.
look at Gallup's numbers, are closer to 30%. So do you feel better about that? That means 7 out of 10 aren't engaged at work. Again, it's a huge issue, and leaders have to own it, and they have to solve it. I will say this: every time those numbers are published, somebody says this is an indictment on the American worker or the global worker. I think it's an indictment on leadership. We're creating those conditions, and we're getting what we deserve based on what we're doing.
Man, I knew it was bad. I didn't know it was that bad. Basically, if you're saying 85%, they're just doing the bare minimum, getting by with their life. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just to show you that, I mean, as time goes on, I have this phrase, think like an entrepreneur. The people who engage, I guarantee they're the ones that get promoted, though, right? It's almost like if you could find the leaders amongst the crowd, those are the ones who
Yeah.
get rewarded. So if you could do a better job at leading and managing and exciting the workforce, potentially you create more leaders, therefore more engagement, probably a better product, better system,
Yep.
better teams, better customer service. Done, right?
Yep. It works.
So I want to touch on escaping the norm. I think that, yeah, the moment things become stale or predictable, it's you start to lose that flair, I guess. But reinvent continuously. I've realized that I'm always reinventing new ideas, new strategies, because everything is unpredictable as an entrepreneur. Who knows how they're going to respond to this new product or this service or this payment plan? So it's just in my blood that, and I don't know if it's in everybody's blood, but I just love being able to be like a street fighter out there. All right, let's try this out. Let's try this out. So I think it keeps it exciting at a certain level. Now we're only about 15 people deep with our organization, but when you're talking about thousands of workers, I don't know how Amazon reinvents continuously. So what do you mean by fundamental number 3?
Well, progress is always preceded by change. Your current systems, structure, behaviors, and beliefs are perfectly aligned for the outcomes you're now receiving. So, if you want to move closer to your vision, if you want to move there with greater pace, you've got to be willing to change something. I meet far too many leaders that think change is a burden, it's an obstacle, it's an inconvenience. And I would say they don't understand their role. The fundamental role of the leader is to create and sustain positive change in service of the vision.
Wow.
And so you gotta reinvent, or you're not doing your job. You're not doing your job. Now, it's a big concept. We give people 3 hooks to think about. This is not exhaustive, but it'll help folks get their head around this. How are you reinventing yourself? What are you learning? How are you growing? Second, how are you reinventing the systems and the work processes? Hope is not a strategy. It's a really good thing, but it is not a strategy for improvement. And third and finally, how are you reinventing the structure? The structure should enable, not inhibit, the accomplishment of the task at hand. And that'll be a good starting point for your listeners to think about. Yeah, I gotta double down here because I don't like the outcomes. I mean, even think about it personally. If you're a student and you don't like your grades, well, what are you going to change? Well, you change your classes, you change your study methods, you change your tutor, you change something.
Yep.
Or you going to keep getting the grades you gotten all along. And so it's the same for leaders. If you don't like your sales or your profits or your customer satisfaction, what are you going to change? You got to reinvent in order to pursue the vision.
Yeah, in the very beginning, that is, like you said, if you have thin skin, that's gonna hurt because you get something set and you don't want to have to go back and go into that bag of tricks and learn something new, right? And as time goes on, you will fall into this trap of comfort, and that is going to be a death sentence. So every time you feel like maybe you've hit a plateau, this is the time for the leader to instill some type of change, whether it's within themselves. I think entrepreneurship is a personal development journey disguised as a business journey. So you have to fix yourself, but also change your strategies, which can be very scary if what you've been doing is working. But then there's that other philosophy. What gets you here is what will keep you here. So you need to constantly evolve. And so
Yeah.
this could be whether it's a mastermind group, like I was part of many masterminds, and it was a point where it's like, well, I know what I need to know here. I need to go somewhere new. Okay, I have X amount of resources. Do I implement it into this side or this side? I've never tried this side, but I think this is what's going to get us to the next level of our business. So it's trying new things and maybe giving the company enough of an understanding that this will be better and then
Mhm.
believing in you. And I think if you produce results, you gain their confidence as time goes on. So there is an equation that's at work at all times. So therefore, if you hit a certain point, you don't stay there ever. You have to be thinking as a leader, all right, now we need a new tool, we need a new resource, we need a new tribe, whatever it is, right?
Yes, sir. You're on it.
Beautiful. Okay. And I do want to touch on this one. This is probably the most exciting to me. Releasing the power, right? Results, value, or value results and relationships. I think Tony Robbins said it best. Your life is based off your quality of thoughts and quality of relationships. I would add one more thing, and that's the quality of your sleep. So those three game changers. So tell me about number 4 here.
Well, valuing results and relationships, I would say, is probably the most challenging for most leaders. And the reason is that many of us, almost all of us, have a natural bias. We are either more results oriented or we're more relationship oriented. Well, and that's fine. I wouldn't suggest you change who you are, but what we have learned is the best leaders value both, which can be quite a trick.
Yeah.
It requires a level of self awareness. We suggest that leaders have to own their own bias and then compensate. I often describe it like a man or woman that wears glasses. You would not look at a leader who wears glasses and say they are a lesser leader. Upon further evaluation, you might say they're pretty smart because they found something they didn't do naturally well and they compensate. Well, the same is true here. If you're more results oriented, you need to compensate on the relationship side. You just have to figure out how much of a prescription do you need. It may be enough to put somebody on your team that is different than you. If you're relationship oriented, they're results oriented. That might be all the correction you need, but you might need to do some other things. And so this requires a lot of discipline and diligence, but the best leaders value results and relationships.
Mm. Yeah, there's a great quote out there about, leaders are made and they're not born. Or do you believe in that? I mean, I don't know if that's the exact quote, but there's anybody can become a leader, right? I think there are people in my organization that never thought that they would be leaders, but they 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 developed a skill set, they grew their
Mm-hmm.
confidence, and then they thought themselves of as
Mm-hmm.
leaders. And it
Yeah,
was
it's a
wild
skill
to see a
set.
transformation.
It's a skill set and a mindset. And it begins with a choice. Now, let me quickly add, I think some people can lead at a higher level. It's like shooting free throws. I can learn to shoot free throws. You can learn to shoot free throws. We're probably not going to shoot them as good as Steph Curry. There are people who are better But if we're going to learn to shoot free throws, we have to make a choice to go and shoot free throws. Same with leadership. It's a skill set and a mindset that can be learned, predicated on a choice to do so.
Hmm. Now, going back to your story with, I think his name is Truett. Is that right? Truett?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What else did you notice amongst that individual? Was he just a born, I mean, you could say, was he a born leader? Was he gifted, or was he just an absolute workaholic? Like, what did you notice amongst him that really inspired people to really build this incredible? I don't know what it was like 45 years ago, but everybody's
Yeah.
heard of Chick-fil-A. So 45 years ago, was it a monster conglomerate back then? And I
No,
would
no,
assume
no.
that
Uh-uh.
no, it
It was
wasn't.
very small, regional. I mean, again, he had 15 employees. Today, there are over 3,000 corporate employees, over 20 billion in sales. So it's come a long way over the last 45 years. Truett actually um, personified all of these fundamentals. In fact, spoiler alert, the epilogue of the book is I shared how Truett lived out all of these fundamentals, because throughout the book, we're featuring leaders that excel in one fundamental or another. But I said, hey, wouldn't it be fun to see this all in one leader? And Truett is my example. He's just really, really good. He worked at being a great leader, but his heart was right, which, as we discuss in the book, gives you a lot of grace in the hearts and minds of people while you're leading. And so he was the whole package.
What I've realized in the great leaders that I look up to is they do all the little stuff, right? Like when you're talking about Truett, he's sitting down with you in a warehouse when technically anybody could have probably trained you. But it's the little stuff. Maybe there was loyalty built in those
Yeah.
moments that helped you believe in him more, and then therefore it produced a better result for years and years
Yeah.
to come. So I would assume it's the little stuff that maybe that goes unnoticed for a long, long time. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Sure. And we talk about in the book, the title of the book is Uncommon Greatness. And one thing about uncommon greatness is it is often unseen. It's often not in the public eye. But as you say, those little things that are cumulative over time, and you can really garner influence and change people's lives sometimes uh, without the attention, without the notoriety.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. It's basically, I heard another great quote. It's like, it's not who you are on social media that matters. It's who are you when nobody's looking. That's whenever
Mm-hmm.
your character is truly exposed. But I think that's probably what maybe builds that muscle of leadership, is like, can you lead yourself? You got to lead yourself
Mm-hmm.
first, and then you can inspire others to take control of their health or their business or their finances, whatever it is. So
Yeah.
being a leader of yourself first. And was there ever a defining moment in your life that made you take control and maybe kind of wake up to a lot of maybe falsehoods? I know in your book you talk a lot about The Matrix, the movie. So it's almost like
Yeah.
once you see something, you can't unsee it. And since 2016, I really woke up to a lot in this world, including who I am as a person. And that has only served me very well. So was there anything like that for you in your life?
Yeah, I would go back about almost 45 years. It's my first job out of the warehouse. I worked in the warehouse about 6 months, and my new supervisor wanted to talk to me about my future. Now, I'm just a kid. I'm may have, I would think I was 19, maybe I had just turned 20. I mean, I was just a kid. And okay, let's talk about the future. I had no idea. I mean, I wasn't thinking about the future. And I'm summarizing, but here's what he conveyed to me back then. He said, if you want more influence, if you want more opportunity, and you want more impact, there's only one path. And I thought, say that again. He said, if you want more influence, if you want more opportunity, and you want more impact, there's only one path. And I said, well, what's that? And he said, lifelong learning. I said, really? I said, is that how the world works? He said, absolutely. Now, my parents wish that I'd had this revelation and insight when I was younger, because I was a lousy student. I said, say it again. He said, if you want more influence, you want more opportunity, and you want more impact, the only way you get there over a lifetime is to commit to lifelong learning. And that was a defining moment for me because I made a choice. Now, I was telling this story not too long ago, and somebody said, well, that's probably easy for you. And I said, which part? And they said, I bet you're a learner. Well, some of your audience will be familiar with Strength Finders, the test you can take, and there are 34 things, and they tell you what you're good at. Well, one of those categories that some people are naturally good at is learner. And I told this person, I said, learner's not in my top 5. It's not in my top 10. I don't think it's in my top 25. And they said, well, that's odd. And I said, well, what's odd about that? And they said, well, you act like a learner. I said, well, I just told you, I made a decision 45 years ago because I want more influence. I want more opportunity. I want more impact in the world. I'm going to pursue lifelong learning, and I'm still chasing it. Learner's still not one of my top 5 or top 10, but I made the strategic life choice so that I could add more value to others. And to me, that's the journey I'm still on today.
Mm. So this is sort of a selfish question, but one thing that I've realized too is letting go is very hard in the beginning. And so the average person listening is an entrepreneur looking to start or grow their business. And there's a quote that I just came up with. I don't know if I've heard it before, but letting go is part of letting it grow. Okay. And it took me down. I mean, it took me a while for me to understand this, but when I started to let go, I started to see the seeds sprout in the company. And maybe it was a little bit longer than I wanted, but letting go was hard but rewarding. What would you say about leadership and how important it is to not micromanage and let things go that maybe others? So it's almost like you wear 1,000 hats in the very beginning. And as time goes on, you're trying to find others who can wear the hat or hats better than you. So
Right.
what would you say about that?
Okay, I would say a lot about that. Let me start by paraphrasing what you said. Some of your audience has heard of a guy named John Maxwell. He taught me the same principle. Here's how he said it: you have to give up to go up. He said
Oh, yeah.
here's what he said. He said, the only thing preventing you from going up is your unwillingness to give up. He said, I can tell you in everybody's career, you just tell me who they are and what they do and what they're accomplishing, and I'll tell you what they haven't given up, which is why they've not gone up any further. So it's the same idea. And so I think it's an ongoing battle. I'm 100 years into my career, and I'm still having those conversations with myself and others. What do I need to give up so I can go up? And so you got to keep asking it. But to your point, you said you want somebody to take that spot who's as good as you are. I'd say your bar set too high. You get people who are 60, 70, 80% as good as you, and you give it to them. And then you coach them and you encourage them and you challenge them. Now, if they can't continue to get better, you may have the wrong person there. But if you wait for everybody, because see, what you really want is people who are better than you. So not just as good as you. So lower the bar a little bit. Be sure they've got the training, education, development, support, encourage, challenge, and accountability they need to keep growing. And in 6 months, a year, they better be better at that thing than you because they get to focus all their time and attention on it.
Oh,
So that'd be my advice. Lower the bar just a little bit.
that's great advice. I've never heard that because I've always heard, find somebody who's better than you. But you're right, especially in the beginning, to find someone who has matched your skill set or at your level right out of the gate, it's a falsehood. It's absolutely impossible. Find someone
Sure.
who's 60, 70, or 80% of who you are, and therefore you can coach them or give them the training. And one thing that I've really implemented is more training within the company. So I find outsiders because I'm always learning, I'm always growing. And it only will help them if I can bring in outsiders that trained me to train them. So I don't know if it's the leader's job to do all of the training, right? You
Oh
always
no,
have,
I would say it's not. I
yeah.
mean, when you're tiny, you might have to, but at some point, no, because you don't have the level of expertise. So let's say you give somebody communications, and maybe they're 60, 70% as good as you are, but they work on it. And a couple of years from now, they're actually better than you. Well, why would you train the new communications person that's going to be on their team? Because they're better at it than you are. So you want them to train. You don't want to train them because you'll be lowering the bar on the new person, right? So yeah, the leaders I don't think should do the training after that first round if you're doing it right. Then those leaders are going to train the next round.
Yes. Yeah, it's like maybe I know how to sell, but I don't know how to teach it. There are people out there who are masters at teaching it. So it's different levels, right? Maybe you do have to give the basics to somebody, your first, second, or third hire. But as time goes on, you find the experts, and therefore your experts will train the team. So that's what we're into right now, and it's definitely doing wonders. Therefore, takes all the pressure off of me to find somebody who I can trust to do all of that heavy lifting and do it the right way. So yeah, leaders don't have to do everything themselves. I guess that's another great point, is that eventually you find the experts and therefore they can train the people. Great point. Outside of your own book, it's a question we always ask. Outside of your own book, is there one that you recommend to our audience when it comes to leadership that you maybe look back and say, holy smokes, that's what put me on this path or changed my life, or a defining moment, if you will?
Yeah, there have been hundreds of books, so it's a little tricky question, but I understand the question. So my answer is don't read just one book. Okay, that's my answer. But if I have to name one book, I
Yeah.
would probably say go back and read The Effective Executive by Peter Drucker. And it's a 40 or 50-year-old book now. I guess it was published in the 60s. And it's a little paperback about this thick, and they still use it in colleges and universities around the world. It is the source of the Nile when looking at most of the topics that are in the popular culture today around leadership. And so I think Peter Drucker's the best management and leadership thinker of the last 2,000 years. And so that's the book I would recommend if you're only going to read one, but don't just read one.
Hey, I've interviewed a couple hundred people on this podcast, and you're the first one to recommend Effective Executive by Drucker. I'm going to check that out. It's awesome. Now,
Please
now,
do.
now your website, before we wrap up here, very well done, by the way, leadeveryday.com. Guys, go to it, check it out. He has different training resources, assessments, books to buy on there. If they go to your website, what do you offer? I guess the training resources are a way to get in touch with you or your team, and what's on there?
All the above. I mean, we've structured it around several felt needs. Some people need to become a better leader, and they know that. Either they became aware of it, or somebody else told them they do. So we've got resources and tools and coaching and all the things that can help you with that. Some people need to improve team performance. We can help you with that. And then third and finally, some people want to strengthen their organization, and we can help with that. And then there's a fourth category that we're building out now called Accelerate Your Success. There's some principles and practices that transcend those three felt needs, and we're trying to add more value there. But let me give you one more quick resource as we land the plane here. My cell number is 678-612-8441. And some of you are driving, so I'd ask you, Mike, to put that in the show notes.
Absolutely.
678-612-8441. And if I can serve you or our team can serve you, we've got coaches and trainers and keynote folks. I mean, we're a full service leadership development agency. So if we can serve you, let me know.
Beautiful. Guys, his other books, Win the Heart, Talent Magnet, Chestnut Checkers, very well done. You obviously see the power of a book, and I see how you've done it on your website. And I respect all of that, because we realize that a book does create a whole new identity, but you're using the book in a way that you have playbooks, you have the planners, it looks like,
The
everything that we
journals.
promote.
Oh,
So great work, man. I
thank you.
respect that.
Thank you.
Guys, get in touch with Mark Miller. Best way to get in touch with you, is it through the website? Is there a social media channel that you're more active on than any other?
Yeah, I would say my cell number is the best way to reach me, and the
Yep.
website gives you all the contact info.
Beautiful. Guys, that number, 678-612-8441. We'll have it in the show notes, and on maybe on the Facebook group too, the $1 Million Circle. So I have to say, Mark Miller, I love talking about leadership. It seems like you put out books consistently. So whenever you put out the next one, please come back on, and let's talk more about how to win the hearts of your clients and your team members, I guess.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
I appreciate it. Remember, guys, $1 million book will lead to $1 million life. Right on.